Hello.
Looks like we're gonna have a full group tonight.
That's fun.
Exciting.
Oh, I see. We even have a tiger in the back.
Wow.
I love it.
Hey, Lisa, Sheridan, Tora, nice to see you.
Nice to meet you, Tora.
Chris, Karen, we're getting very excited about your session tomorrow. We'll talk more about that later. Eric, welcome. Glad to have you here. Larry, hope you're doing well today. It's so nice to see all you guys over and over. It's starting to really feel like a family.
Yeah. When we do the family reunion, it's going to be
21 days from now or 21 months of later. I don't know how we'll do that. Welcome, everyone.
That's funny. Paula, we have a different, there you go. Now I know who it is.
Got it.
Yeah. Hi, Paula. And yeah, so if you guys want to drop in how you are today, how are you feeling? Just kind of checking in. I'm excited. We've done a live session with Froswa Booker-Drew, right?
It was incredible.
Oh my God.
Yeah, really good.
Touched us deep.
A few months ago.
Was really awesome. And you want to talk about resilience today, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Definitely a relevant topic for me today. I feel a little like I need a little.
For all of us.
Hang on 1 second on screen sharing. People are still trickling in, so we'll just chat for a few more minutes and then I'll hand it over to you. So
No worries.
I see how people are feeling. We have Halloween hangovers in the room. My 6th grader came home and said her teacher had to leave early because of a headache. And I thought,
Yeah.
I would, if I was a teacher the day after Halloween, I would have a headache in the morning, not leave early.
Hi, Rebecca.
So we are really excited to have Dr. Froswa Booker-Drew here with us as our guide today. And she is, Resiliency in the Face of Resistance is the name of today's session. For many of us, the ambiguity of the pandemic, compounded with uncertainty and loss, has exacerbated the many issues that we already face. Just as exercise develops our muscles, Dr. Froswa will help us deal with those challenges in a way that empowers us to build resilience. All yours, Froswa.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you all this evening. I am going to share my screen and hope it works. And so thank you for this opportunity to share a subject that I am so passionate about. I am going to really try to do this in 21 minutes. I told them I have been practicing, and so we're going to make this work. So I want you to look at this picture, because when we think about resilience and you see concrete, and so often we don't realize what the grass or flower that we're paying attention to has gone through to break through the cement. And I think it speaks volumes for many of us that we go through so many different challenges and traumas that we face in our life. And despite all of those things that we endure, we still are able to bloom. And that is really what we're going to talk about tonight, is in the midst of having so much of what we've gone through in the last year and a half, that we can still bloom and break through whatever it is that we find ourselves facing. And so just a little bit about me. I am honored to be a guide with Godly. It is a gift to be able to do this work. My day job, I work at the State Fair of Texas, and I tell everyone I make corn dogs and funnel cakes. And I have been, serving as a coach and a mentor for a number of years, whether it's as an instructor or a teacher or a professor. And I love being able to share some of the things that I've learned, hoping that it will help you in your journey. And so tonight, there are a couple of things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the power of your narrative, because there is such power in our testimonies and how they can be used for healing and redemption and so many other things. But then we're going to talk about what is resilience. We hear that word a lot. Just like during COVID, we kept hearing pivot. That was the word all the time. We're going to pivot. We've been hearing resilience a lot. So we're going to talk about what is resilience. And then I want to talk a bit about what is change and show you a tool to help you think through change and how you process it. The other thing that we'll spend a little bit of time talking about is how do you extend empathy to yourself and others? That when we're going through tough times, it's important for us to forgive ourselves, to have the compassion that we often give to other people. We have to do that for ourselves. And then lastly, I'm going to share with you some lessons that I've learned and I hope will help you in this season. So we've gone through an enormous amount with the pandemic, social unrest, the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many other people, the presidential election. I mean, it was a lot last year. And then for me, what I experienced in 2020 was this amazing young man, Chris Miller, that I have known since Chris was a toddler. And Chris, last August, was going off to college. It was his senior year. And I was so excited because he's like a year older than my daughter. And Chris went to campus and caught COVID. And Chris ended up in the hospital. And about 3 times we thought we were going to lose Chris. And he had so much going on. And finally, he was able to come home. And then he turned 22 last November, birthday celebrated. And then in December, Chris went into the hospital because where they did the trach broke. And Chris passed away. His mother and I have been friends for decades. And to walk with my dear friend through this significant loss was devastating. To not only watch what she went through, but to try to remain strong for her. I was dealing with my grief and knowing this baby his entire life and seeing what happened to Chris. And out of this, there's been so much beauty because Chris' legacy has been amazing throughout this time. And so we had his services earlier this year, but those kinds of experiences are not just unique for me. For so many of us, we've either directly been impacted or indirectly watching people on television, you know, and hearing about it. And there is so much that we all endure. And so it's important for us to be aware of these experiences that we go through, because quite often we have things like what happened in Texas. I call it Snowmageddon, where we had all this snow. And for those of you who are in different parts of the country, folks were going, well, we go through snow all the time. Trust me, in Texas, they see flakes and it's like, it's over, shut everything down. And so when this happened, I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to the grocery store, and I bought up all this food, not thinking that I would not have electricity and could not prepare food. And so we started going through these rolling blackouts. And I thought, okay, well, we'll be fine. And then for about 11 hours, my electricity didn't come on. And I had to move in with a friend. And the whole time I'm at her home, I'm terrified that the lights are going to go out there and we're going to have to travel in all this ice to get somewhere else. Another friend of mine didn't have a place to stay. So I'm inviting her over to this person's house that she didn't know. And for 4 days, we were in her home and she extended such love and such compassion. But in that moment, I realized how fortunate I was to have the relationship and the power relationships. But that Monday, we all went right back to work and everybody acted as if nothing happened. And that bothered me so much, because there is something about us and this society that when we go through things, we tell ourselves, just keep going, just keep moving through it. And we don't ever take the time to lament. When we look at ancient scriptures and see how so many books are dedicated to lamenting, to mourning, part of our resilience is creating the space to mourn and be present in the moment and wrestle with the feelings that we have. And so often we just keep going, and we don't have the opportunity to heal. And so after that experience, I wrote a piece, and this was something that came out of that. And I said, it's interesting that in grammar, the comma represents a pause, and the period is designed to stop before moving to another thought. Why is it that we understand that in language, but have failed to see the correlation in our lives? That quite often we need to put commas behind things and take a moment to breathe. Quite often we need to take periods behind the experiences that we have and finish the complete thought before we move to something else. And we don't take the time to do that in our lives. And as a part of resilience, We have got to know when to pause, but we have got to know when to put a complete period behind it and stop, so that we can take the time to process, take the time to heal, take the time to mourn, because there's loss that we go through when we have these experiences. It may not be the loss of life for some, but for many people, it was the loss of freedom. It was the loss of being in control of your life and being able to know what you were going to do. And we need to create these spaces where we can just be quiet and listen and allow ourselves to have the experience. And so one of the things that I am really big on is this idea of narrative identity. There's a scholar by the name of McAdams who has done all this research on the power of stories. And he talks about that when we are in our adolescence, we begin to start remembering stories because they serve as lessons for us. And so we continue to have stories with actors and different experiences as a part of our stories, and our stories evolve and change. But part of resilience is understanding your story and knowing that in order to be able to learn from it, we've got to spend some time paying attention to it and adjusting to what the story will teach us. And so part of working our muscle and resilience is thinking about how when we go through adversity and trauma and different experiences that cause us stress, whether that's in relationships, whether it's illness, whether it's financial problems, whatever it is, that resilience means that we bounce back. But in addition to bouncing back, there is the possibility for growth because of this experience. What concerns me about the ideal of bouncing back, and my daughter and I were talking about this one morning, and she was saying, you know, Mama, if you take a rubber band and you stretch it a whole lot, it'll bounce back. But depending on how far it's pulled, the elasticity may not be there and it may not look the same. So we may bounce back, but at the end of that experience, we may be actually very different than when we started. Even if you take a fork and bend it back, yes, it may go back into shape once we push it back, but it may not exactly be the same because of the trauma that it has gone through. And part of what we have to understand around resilience is thinking about our behaviors, how we think about things, what we do. And anyone can do this. It isn't something that is extraordinary. All of us have these moments in our lives where we are having to adjust and adapt and be agile. And that results in our resilience. So, as I mentioned about trauma, I don't think we also spend enough time focusing on the role of trauma in our lives. So often we talk about what's wrong with people and we look at folks and go, what's wrong with them? And we don't think about what's happened. And so when we think about trauma-informed care in our own lives, and you're hearing more schools talk about this and implementing it, and healthcare is looking at how do you implement trauma-informed care. As individuals, we have to extend that kind of compassion to ourselves and not go, what's wrong? Why can't I get over this? Part of resilience is paying attention to what happened and how did we arrive here. And so I would encourage you, as you are going through these experiences, giving yourself permission to feel, giving yourself permission to go through the story and not focus on what's wrong, but focus on what happened to put you in the position that you are having to deal with. And there are many types of trauma that people experience, whether it's acute or chronic or complex. Acute trauma is one time we have an experience. You know, it could be a car accident and that's jolting for us. And so often we just go, oh, it was a car accident. But the idea of having to be faced with injury or even death is traumatic. But there's also chronic trauma where it's a prolonged experience, whether it is something around domestic violence or complex trauma, where we're having these events, and there are different types of events that may be financial and relational, and these things are happening at the same time. It's important to be aware that all of us experience trauma in some way. And part of our resilience is calling this stuff out and being aware that it's painful, it hurts, it's difficult to go through. And yet we still figure out how to make it happen. So in thinking about trauma and thinking about resilience, it's also about how do we manage change, because so much of our lives involve dealing with change. And I would encourage you to get this book. There is an amazing book, and I don't have time tonight to go through the tool, but it's called Immunity to Change. And it's written by 2 authors, Keegan and Leahy. And what they say in this book is that any adult, doesn't matter age or anything, can change. But what typically keeps us from changing is not because we don't have the information. We often have the things that we need to do, but it really boils down to our mindset and the way that we think about things. And so as we're dealing with change, change really is about, how do we deal with our emotions? How do we deal with behavior, our actions? And this is a cycle by Kubler-Ross. And it's an amazing model that's similar to kind of the model of grief, that you see how we go through these different stages of managing change, whether it's shock and we're so, unaware of what's happening, we don't believe it's going on, to, denial and being frustrated, but also going through these moments of being depressed, and then trying to figure out ways that we can experiment to find our way throughout the process, and then making decisions on how we're going to move forward. So this is another amazing tool to help you think about when you're going through change, that it isn't always the straight line to get to the end, that we go through these ebbs and flows as we're dealing with change and dealing with resistance. So what are some of the final thoughts that I want to give to you this evening as I look at my time? And so there are some lessons that I have learned in the process of dealing with resistance and resilience. You have to know the capital that you have. There is another scholar that I love her work. I know I'm being so nerdy tonight, but there is this other scholar by the name of Tara Yasso, and she created this model called the Community Cultural Wealth Model. And what she says in this is that within every community, there are all these different assets. And I take it a little bit deeper because I believe that every individual has these assets that exist. And I won't go through all of them that she talks about, but there are 3 that I want you to pay attention to. It's the aspirational, it's your social capital, and it's navigational. Aspirational is hope. How do we get through difficult situations? We have to have hope. And so you have to be aware of how hope can move the needle and how it is transformative when we do have it. So much of what we're seeing in our world now are people who feel hopeless and don't have possibility. And when we lose that, we lose our ability to really fight back the challenges that we face. Social capital is really about your relationships, your networks, your associations. How are you using your friends as a support system? Who are the people in your life that you can count on when you're going through difficult situations, and making sure that you have people that you can reach out to and just be yourself? I think we spend so much time, as a doctor told me, we're human beings, not human doings. And so how do you have people that allow you to just be? And then the navigational capital, which is really about how do you, in very difficult situations, find the way to navigate, and thinking about using that as an asset. It is a gift and a tool to be able to figure out how to get through difficult situations. Pat yourself on the back because you can do that. Know that that is an asset that you have at your disposal. And then embrace your stories and the stories of other people. There is healing when we talk about our trauma and our experiences and what we've gone through. So instead of pushing that down and trying to always remain strong, it's important that we pay attention to the power of our stories, because our stories tell us a lot about who we are and how we see the world. Reflection is your superpower. When you take the time to be present and pay attention to what you're going through and how are you feeling, where is it showing up in your body when you feel uncomfortable? And instead of pushing it away, pay attention to it. Again, the role of the relationships. Self-care is important. And you hear so many people talk about, oh, I'm taking care of myself. I would encourage you to do that. But I am so concerned that we spend a lot of time talking about self-care and we don't talk about communal care. What does it look like when the community is whole and well? How are you building your community to make sure that you are well and taken care of? And telling the story, there's healing in the power of the story. How do you do that collectively instead of in isolation? And then the 3 Ps, making sure that you pay attention to your passion, because that will get you through when you're going through difficult times, being aware of your purpose, and then your positionality, which is this academic term that basically means where you stand on something. and thinking about the multiple identities that you have. How does that show up as you deal with resistance? If you've been through difficult times, how do you go back to those stories and use that as fuel to help you get through what you're going through? Your mindset matters. And this goes back to the work of Keegan and Leahy, where they talk about these 3 mindsets. The socialized mind is a mind that basically says, hey, whatever you give me, I misinterpret it. We all do that. It's not bad. And I don't want to give the impression that one mindset is better than the other. We all find ourselves there. But then the self-authoring mind is one that when we get information, we only filter what applies to us. Hopefully, we spend time trying to be more self-transforming, which basically is I can see how I feel and how someone else feels, and I'm able to go between the two and value that. Your mindset will help you get through this. And if you spend more time in the socialized space, it's so easy to misinterpret what is going on around you without seeing all the goodness that may be occurring in your life. Forgiveness of self is critical. It is hard to extend love to other people when you are seeing yourself as what's wrong with me. So love yourself, forgive yourself, give yourself compassion, lament when you're going through this. And then humility is huge, and just staying humble and knowing that you're not the only one who goes through these situations. And when you share your story in community, you can begin to understand that you're not alone and you can get through this. And the last thing that I've learned is, as we deal with resilience, it's so easy to be in captivity to activity. I had a lady tell me that years ago. It's a very dangerous thing because you spend so much time trying to do and not deal. So it's okay, again, to go through the experience and allow yourself the space and the time to reflect and just be. Give yourself permission to be human. What we're noticing now in our society is, as restaurants have reopened and people are getting back into a sense of normalcy, we're being rude and mean to one another. And so because we are hurting and we won't deal with our hurt, we're hurting other people. And it's important that we step back and recognize, just as I may be having a bad day, Joe down the street may be having a bad day too. And so your homework in the process of this, very quickly, is to create a manifesto of resilience. And so manifestos are kind of these claims of what am I going to do to do whatever it is, whatever the dream may be that you have. And so manifestos are designed to challenge us. They're really short. They're not these long narratives and essays, and they're magical. They can be, because they really talk about aspiration. And so I want you to create this manifesto of resilience, but I also want you to come up with the affirmations. What are the I am statements that you tell yourself when you're going through difficult times and change? So if you don't have 3 to 5 affirmations that you have up on your mirror, that when the hard times come, they remind you of who you are and whose you are, that's important. So that's your homework assignment for this module. And then if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Godly, and a shameless plug for my podcast that talks a lot about resilience too. So thank you for the opportunity to share with you today in 21 minutes. I'm going to shut up and thank you.
You did so great staying on time. Thank you. And I think I want to extend it out a little bit by asking you if you can give us a couple of examples of manifestos.
So I have actually this picture I should have brought that is over my bed. And this wonderful lady paints these murals of, it's like a girl, and it has all these I am statements. And mine says, I am an overcomer. I am strong. I am smart. I am funny. I am family oriented. And all of these different statements she's painted. And that's what my manifesto is. So when I go through really difficult times, I'm able to see that right above my headboard to remind me, no matter what I go through, I take all of this with me. A friend of mine reminded me that we never start over, that we always bring ourselves wherever we go and all those experiences. And so that reminds me, no matter where I go, all of that is a part of who I am.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I want to ask you to present our speaker tomorrow, but she's here.
She's here. Karen, would you like to present yourself? Share a couple lines about yourself, or would you like me to do the typical
Oh, I'd like you to do the typical thing. I'd like
Yeah.
You got it.
Thank you.
Got it. Let me pop the link to book a discovery session with Froswa in the chat real quick, and then I'll be happy to introduce Karen.
So excited to have you. Thank you so much, Froswa. That was awesome.
Really awesome.
Thank you.
And I will also plug your podcast because I was a guest on it a few months ago and we talked quite a bit about Guidely and it was really a beautiful interview. I'll see if I can find the link to our interview, or if you can send it to me, I'll put it in the portal.
Awesomeness.
A really relevant topic tonight. Thank you. So tomorrow we have Karen, who's been really an incredible member of our community for
Yeah,
this challenge.
The pillar.
And in 2011, Karen's husband passed away from a brain tumor. Before, during, and after that time, there were 10 principles and practices that she used in her life. Join us tomorrow for 10 Principles of a Life Worth Living, which is also the title of her book.
I have goosebumps, I swear.
And we're really excited for tomorrow. We've got really an incredible lineup. We're just over halfway through the retreat. And
So this is number 11, right?
12.
12. Huh.
Yes, number 12.
So how are we doing so far? One word. How are you guys feeling? How is it going?
Be gentle, please. No. Be honest, be authentic. Larry will miss tomorrow working at the election polls. The replay will be in your portal. Don't worry, but we will miss you. Resilient, grateful, enjoying every session, inspirational, passion, very hopeful.
So fun.
Awesome.
I feel so grateful for all of you. So cool. We will see you all tomorrow.
Yes,
or
Lynn.
Those who can't come.
Sorry, I'm seeing the comments still. Lynn feels like she's part of a family. It really is
You
feeling
are,
like that.
yeah.
So we're really excited.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Okay, let's unmute. Let's give some gratitude and goodbyes. And
Thank
we'll
you
see
so
tomorrow.
much. And so
Thank
excited to see you
you.
tomorrow.
This is
Karen.
wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Froswa.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.